Hello, thank you so much for having me at Data Relay, and also thank you for not having to traipse around the country in a van and be extraordinarily tired on Friday night. So I get to talk to you about Azure Arc enabled data services. And this presentation is also has a subtitle of Why Everything Must Be Named Ben, which will become obvious in a while. We're going to fly through relatively quickly, but feel free to interrupt me with questions. Otherwise, you'll find my contact details there. So at SQLDBA with a beard is the best way to get in touch with me on Twitter. Always happy to answer questions. My name's Rob. I'm a dual MVP. I work as a consultant and automating and helping people to deliver changes for their data platform. I do a load of stuff. There we go. So let's head right into the presentation. Why Azure Arc enabled data services? What is it for? So these people, Flexera, did a state of the cloud report. And what they found is that from the people that responded, 2% just used a private cloud. They only had stuff in their own data centers. Nearly 20% used everything in the public cloud. But the vast majority in the middle use a bit of both, use a bit of everything. And I think that's a pretty common scenario for people. And this is where Azure Arc enabled data services can be of benefit. Because our services live everywhere. So they live in the cloud, in Azure, or AWS, or GCP. They live in our data centers. They live in Kubernetes clusters. They live on a server under somebody's machine, under somebody's desk. And our management of all of those things is everywhere. Which tool do I need to do to look after that service or this service? Or our company has bought three other companies in the last 6 months, and they're things we have to access in a different way. We have this toolbox and we kind of throw our hand in and hope we come up with the right tool to get to the place where we need to fix or look at. But Azure Arc enabled data services lives anywhere. You can use it in a connected scenario. So it is connected up to Azure. The name gives it away, Azure. The benefits are that it's always current. So you're always kept up to date with the latest SQL, what Microsoft are calling evergreen SQL. You get all the beauty of the cloud. So you get elastic scale. You can deploy in seconds. You can scale up and scale down. It's amazing for automation. So one of the reasons I enjoy playing with it so much. But you get a unified management pane. So you've got a one view for all of your SQL instances, whether they're on-prem or in a cloud, whether that cloud is AWS or GCP or in Azure. In your data center, it's all based on Kubernetes. Kubernetes is a thing that's looking after all of this. And whilst that sounds like, I don't really know Kubernetes, I don't know containers, how is that all going to help me? It's okay. We can use Azure. There's our Azure portal. And we can use Azure Data Studio. Beautiful tooling that we use and we know. We don't need to know Kubernetes to be able to use this. Somebody will have needed to set up a Kubernetes cluster, but you don't go and set up a data center. You don't go and set up Azure or GCP or AWS. Those are already set up and looked after by somebody else. You make use of the service on them, and Azure Arc enabled data services does the same thing. Here's how it works. Here are the guts of it. This is what happens. There is a data controller. And the data controller holds all of the things. They're all different pods. containers holding code that enables you to have dashboards, metrics, logs, takes control of backup and restore, enables high availability, automation of provisioning, all with an API. And as I said, there are two connectivity modes. So you have direct connected. Your data controller is connected to Azure and syncs up information or syncs down tasks. Or you can have indirectly connected, which means that when you choose to, if you wish to, you can then push all of that information up into Azure. You can have everything sat in its own individual place. Think of ships or lorries or mines or nuclear power stations or things that you want to keep separate. Those are the places where maybe this might be used. The data services that we have are Azure Arc enabled managed instance. So SQL Server's managed instance experience, evergreen SQL, running in your own data center, on your own equipment, or in Azure or Google or AWS. And at the moment, Azure Arc enabled Postgres SQL is the other offering. Maybe more will come in the future. So how do we deploy? Well, we use tools that I know. Azure Data Studio. You can use the Azure Data CLI, which you can use to interact with your Azure data services in Azure. And you can use straight hard Kubernetes. If you just want to go straight right down to the command line and go Kubernetes, you can do that as well. Whichever it is that's easiest for you. Now, because we are using a container, we can specify different storage for our data. So in the same way as within our data center, we might say to our storage team, yep, I want a load of backup. I want 4 terabytes of backup space, please. And yeah, it just needs to be there and to be able to be written to. But I want my temp DB and I want that in the fastest storage you could possibly give me, please, because that's really important. In the same way, you can enable different storage classes for your containers, for your data services. You can have local storage, which is on the node where your data controller is running. Or you can have remote storage, which could be anywhere. This opens up a lot of possibilities that a lot of companies who do backup and recovery and high availability below the scenes are going to take use of. Keep an eye on that as it comes through. We've got our metrics sat in a portal. There's our Azure portal showing the metrics of my Benji managed instance that is literally running down there on a NUC in my office, in my data center, if you like. Have the logs. There's my SQL Server log from a managed instance available to me in Azure. But we also have it built in locally. So we don't need to be connected to Azure to get that. Here we have metrics that are built in. They're super good. It's all using Grafana. The logs, searchable logs, all built in using Kibana. So that's the slides done. We're going to fly through the slides real easy. What I'm going to do, because I often forget to come back to these slides, is I'm going to give you some resources now. Now, one resource you're going to want to know about is where can I find these slides and this code? So beard.media/presentations. That's going to take you to my GitHub repository, my presentations repo, and you can find this presentation and many others there. Feel free to go and use them as you wish. If you're going to be interested in looking at Azure Arc enabled data services, I highly, highly recommend that you have a look at the book, Azure Arc enabled data services revealed, based on the public preview. My friends Anthony Nocentino and Ben Weissman have written this book, and not only does it give you an introduction an understanding of what Azure Arc enabled data services is, but it is actually an excellent introduction to Kubernetes and how pods and nodes and services and deployments and stateful sets and all of this other language that we use, what they mean. You can also find docs.microsoft and an Azure Jumpstart, Azure Arc Jumpstart.io, which will have some, what's the word? Demos is the word I'm looking for. Some demos that you can follow along to be able to work with Azure Arc enabled data services. That is how you get in touch with me if you wish to have any questions. What we'll do now is we will end the show. And now somebody's going to have to give me that information that we need, which is this all big enough? And please feel free to jump in at any point. So the first thing I'm going to show is a visualization of what my Kubernetes cluster looks like. So this uses something called Weave. And in Weave, we can see, if we look at the system, we can see that you got all of this stuff that is running Kubernetes. So if we look here, we've got our kube controller, we've got our API server. You can see this is running on Beard Linux. So that's the master node that's doing all of my controlling. And I can't use Zoom today. And if we look at the Arc AZ namespace, where I've got all of my Arc infrastructure, what you can see is that there's a lot of things here. So we've got metrics. We've got, this is an MI here. Here's our Benji MI with a logs and a data set of storage. We've got our controller. This is our data controller. This is the one that's ensuring that everything is as it should be, making sure that we're doing all of our backup if need be, or a high availability if need be. But again, you don't need to worry about this, because if you wish to create an Azure Arc enabled data service, it's as simple as doing something like this. So what I might do actually is move that panel to the bottom. There we go. So we're going to set ourselves up a username and a password. Put those in as environmental variables. And then we're going to run this one piece of code. AZ data, Arc, SQL, MI, create. Create me an Azure Arc enabled data services SQL managed instance, please. And I'll give it a name of data relay. And I would like to use my storage class for my data is going to be Ben's local storage. It's just the name of a storage class. And for my logs, I'm going to use the same storage class. And then what I'd like is I'd like you to request 2 CPUs and limit me to 4 CPUs. And I'd like to request 10 gigabytes of RAM and limit to 16 gigabytes of RAM. So here, here is another look at our Kubernetes infrastructure. And what you can see here is that we have our pods. So again, there's all named. There's an MI. Here is our controller. There are all of our metrics, management proxy. And when we run, thank you, Docker. When we run this code, it's going to run off and it's going to go and do what it needs to do. So it's going to use this environment variable, and it's going to use this password, and it's deploying the data relay MI in the namespace ArcAZ. And if I refresh my pods, you could see, you saw it ping in just then. Here we have data relay 0, a data relay 0 pod. Now, even though it's green, we don't actually have everything running just yet. So we've got 2 of our 3 pods are running. If we go back and look at our infrastructure, are you going to be live? Shall I just refresh you anyway? Let's refresh you anyway. And what we will see is here. Here is our data. Oops, here is, I told you I was being rubbish at Zoom it today. Here is my data relay with my 3 containers. And here is my storage. And these are the connections that I've got. If I look over here, you see it says it's running, gives me my internal IP. And I have 3 containers. So I have Arc-SQL MI. That is my container that runs my SQL Server. That is my SQL Server container. I've got CollectD and I've got FluentBit. Those are Azure Arc enabled things that enable everything to work. So hopefully, having shown you that, my data relay MI is ready. So if I run AZ data, Arc, SQL, endpoint list for the data relay MI, it's going to show me what endpoints I have available for me. And it tells me that I've got a SQL managed instance, and that is running at this IP address and port. And I have a log search dashboard that's running in Kibana. And I have a metrics dashboard that's running in Grafana. So I could click those links, but we've already got that open. So what I need to do, good remembering, Rob, is I need to remember to copy this IP address and port. So later in a demonstration, please remind me if I forget to do this. I'm going to set some credentials. Now, they say Ben's credentials, and it's called Ben Admin. And that's because Ben Weissman, who wrote the book, is the person that enabled me to get my demos working. Every point I had a problem, we would work something out, and I would jokingly name the storage Ben's local storage, and then it worked. And I would jokingly name the MI Ben MI with the changes he told me, and then it worked. So that is why this demonstration is known as why everything should be named Ben. So did I remember to paste that in there? I didn't. There we go. So I'm going to set my SQL instance, and I'm going to connect with dbatools. There we go. Easy as that. And I'm going to set this default parameter so that every dbatools command that's got a SQL instance parameter uses this connection. It's not the name of the instance, notice. It is actually an already open instance with the credentials. So let's have a look at the databases that we've got. And what we've got, as you would expect, is SQL instance called data relay-0 and master temp model and MSDB. So how can I restore my database on there? There's a number of ways of doing it. But the easiest way for me right now is to copy an AdventureWorks backup into my container. So that's what this command does. kubectl, the command line infrastructure for working with Kubernetes. CP is copy. I'm going to copy the AdventureWorks backup. I'm going to put it in the data relay pod at var opt MS SQL backups and the container Arc SQL MI in the namespace Arc AZ. So let's run all of that. Copy this backup across to my container. And it works really quickly. And it doesn't work really quickly now, which is awesome. Thanks for that. I did this 3 times this morning and it was red pink. I can't really dance. Are you actually copying? This is the question. Oh, no idea what's happening. Let's have a look at our Grafana whilst we wait. So if we look at Grafana, you can see that at the moment, I'm connected to Benji01, and we have our other instances, the ones that we've created, ones that I have just created, and one that I created earlier. And this is our Grafana dashboard. And you see it's running live, and I've had a workload running against my Benji MI. So I can see how many batch requests we've been using. I can see what my wait statistics have been like. I can dive into always on, or what my buffer cache looks like. Is really super. You've got all sorts of information here, and you can print it if you accidentally press that button. Oh, that's wonderful. Let's see. Let's have a look on the container with get DBA file. Have we got the thing? I think it actually worked. It just never gave me back a prompt. So you can see we've used get DBA file. We've looked in our data relay instance, and we found in the backups directory that we've got our AdventureWorks. I'm just going to use dbatools. I'm just going to restore the database. So I'm just going to restore the database. Awesome. Look at this. Rob's demo is failing. It appears to be from... Anyway, that's absolutely how you do it. I'm going to just delete this MI. Oh, I just deleted an MI, just like that. And I'm going to show you a different way of interacting. Remember I said you can do it in a number of different ways. And one way you don't want to do it is at the command line. Some people, it's not a comfortable place to be. Maybe you'd be happier doing it in Azure Data Studio. So do we have any queries running? No, we have nothing running at the moment. So in Azure Data Studio, we have in our servers list, which is this one here.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Sounds like there's half a question. No, okay, carrying on. We have our Azure Arc controllers. So I'm going to click on Manage, and that is going to show me my Azure Arc data controller with the resources I've got. So you can see I've got a managed instance called Benji. And perhaps what I want to do is do some work with it. So maybe instead of being on that demo, we could run a workload. So let's just run a random workload. And I'm, haha. Nope, that should be right. Let's make sure we've got an instance name. I've just put the wrong instance name in. Nope, I haven't. No, I haven't. No, I haven't. I'm going to run a workload. So this is just going to run 1,000 jobs, parallel at 30. So if we go and have a look at our managed instance and we change this to 5 minutes, you can see here that immediately our user connections have started to go up. So if we refresh this, you can see that we're starting to get some information about our query that's going. See how many batch requests we're doing. So at the moment, we've had a max of 823 and a low average because it's over these 5 minutes. And this is ticking along. And maybe we're thinking, well, this is rubbish. I'd wish it went a bit quicker. I think if I gave it more CPU, this would be much quicker. So if I click on my instance, here we can see that we can see what our endpoint is, and we can see the links for our dashboard. And we also have this button here. It says compute and storage. And at the moment, it's got CPU request of 2 and a limit of 4. Well, let's see. Has my managed instance completed? Yes, it's completed. So if I come to here and I think, well, actually, you know what? I'm going to double that. So I'm going to have that at 4. I'll put this up to 8. No, you know what? I'm going to have 6 CPUs, all of the CPUs. And we'll take this up to 14. I can't remember how much RAM my Nook's got, but if it breaks, it breaks. We can fix it. I change this value and I can click save. And it says down here at the bottom, oops, it says down here, no, it says down here at the bottom, updating instance Benji. So if we come back and have a look at our pods, and you can see that Benji at the moment only has two containers running in its pod. So this means that this Arc SQL MI container has been shut down and is being redeployed with a new set of resources. So whilst this is happening, if I try to run this code, it's going to come back and say, I don't have a connection yet. And come back and go, no, there's nothing there. It takes a minute to time out. So whilst it's really cool, I can just scale up and down, it is a bit of downtime. And in a minute, this is going to fail. And it'll say, no, we're not ready yet. There we go. Connection failed because the connected party didn't respond. Because I only have 2 containers. My Arc SQL MI container is not up and running. Hang on a minute, Rob. You've just thrown away my production database. My AdventureWorks production database was sat on this instance. I wonder. There we go. See, we're still open. There we are. So there's Benji. This is a static thing. So there's my AdventureWorks database. What's happened to my data? Well, remember, I said that in Weave, if we looked at Benji, oh, totally failing to find anything today. Right, where's Benji? If we looked at Benji, here is our Benji container. Our Benji container, the Arc SQL MI, actually has 2 lots of storage, data and logs. We haven't changed that. We've added a new container, but we've kept our storage separate, basically reattaching our storage to our instance. And it's all happening magically in the background. So if I refresh this, we're at 3 of 3. I can run exactly the same workload again. And this time I could come back into my dashboard and we'll see that this time, what did we have? 823 and 262 max, and it took that long. Well, with twice as many CPUs, I wonder if it's going to be quicker. And it doesn't always go quicker. Sometimes it's a little bit different. But you can see that my weight statistics have changed. You can see that I've got different information in my buffer pool. So there maybe this test isn't quite right. But you can see that things are happening. Well, it turns out that looks like it's gone a little bit longer. And I haven't got any max. So maybe it wasn't CPU that was my problem after all. Maybe it was something else. But you can see I can analyze your workload. Okay, I've finished that. Maybe I just want to set this back. And guess what? Setting this back is as easy as this. Well, I can't remember what it was at. Let's put it on that. We change our values and we hit save. How cool is this? How easy is this for us to use? To be able to just scale up and scale down our managed instance straight from Azure Data Studio without any worries. Anybody could do this if they had the right permissions to be able to do it. So what I meant to do before I did that was to show you that AdventureWorks is still running, but you could see that it was still running because my queries were starting running again. So that hopefully is enough proof for you to see. So that's on-prem. Now, as I said, I've been running some workload against this managed instance. using exactly this. There is the code, just do some random things, do a random sleep and run. And I'm running my data center, my Nooks in my office in disconnected mode. And that means that what I need to do is to upload my metrics and my logs and my usage into the Azure portal. And I did this with a script, just using a while loop. But you could use a scheduled job. Maybe if you're in a proper disconnected mode, you're going to run this as a scheduled job in your disconnected environment. You're going to copy these files over to somewhere that's allowed to connect to the internet, and then you're going to upload them. That's what you need. Maybe when your truck gets back to the depot, that's what will happen. So what we do is we do an AZ Data Arc DC data controller export, and we export our metrics into a file, and I put the force in case the file still exists. And if I've got a file, then I upload it. So I use AZ Data Arc DC data controller upload and the path to my file. And that will then upload my data into the Azure portal, both into the metrics on my managed instance and into my log analytics workspace. You have to provide the information for your workspace ID and a key to be able to do this, which I don't show here, but you can look in the docs to find out how to do this. So let's have a look in the portal. So here we are, we're in the portal, and if Rob can get this right, there we go. So we're in the portal, we're in my Arc data resource group, and you can see that I've got a log analytics workspace called Logalytics. I've got my Benji managed instance, and I've got my Beard Arc data controller. So if I look at my managed instance, it shows me a little bit of information about it. I can do some alerting. I can look at my metrics. If I look at my metrics, I have transactions per second, and you can see how long my workload has been running. Got some information here, which means that you can do something like this. You can put this information onto a dashboard in the portal, and this is live. So if we can refresh it, it's going to show us what's been happening. Use that information. And we can also look at our logs. So our logs would live in our log analytics workspace. And what you will find there is that you have, we'll close that one, is you've got some custom logs here. So we've got custom logs, and in our custom logs, we've got our Postgres instance ones, our SQL managed instance, and other things that I've logged into here as well. And you could create yourself a workbook. So we could create a workbook. Let's just refresh this. This is my workbook that I might keep in my Azure data resource group. It's going to connect to my log analytics. It might be for all of my managed instances on my fleet of trucks, or my submarines, or my ships, or my nuclear power stations, or my oil rigs, or those sort of things. And I can look at how many log entries I've got. Maybe I can see how many log entries I'm getting per hour. So you can see that the data relay managed instance actually created me some logs in this hour. How many failed logins have I had per hour? Maybe I want to look at the detail of my failed logins. Oh, this doesn't look so good, does it? Look, so yeah, but a matter of minutes ago, there was a login failed for the user. I will steal your data. I'll get it somewhere. I'm going to keep trying till I get it. As well as having your logs, you could set up your alerts just like you've got in Azure. If this was a connected environment, you could make use of all that log analytics, Azure Monitor goodness for data that you have to keep on-prem in your own data center, which you put in a Kubernetes cluster in a managed instance. We can even look at our logs. So if we have a look at our logs, I think all of these are now going to be for Benji. Yeah, they are. If I'd done this quickly enough, we could have seen both instances in there. But you can get the information about, oh, there we go. So we've got data relay logs, and I've got my Benji logs up here. So you can see this just looks like a SQL Server error log. Got some extra bits that you maybe don't see so often, but it is just there. So this is the goodness of having everything in the portal. Let me come back to here. So let's try one more thing. We've got another type of data service that we can create, and it is an availability group. So you've already seen when we scaled up and scaled down that we could throw away our Benji pod, or our Arc SQL MI container, and it will come back and everything's fine. And I am literally so confident that I can right click on here and click delete. And whilst we're talking, it's going to throw away my Benji pod, the whole thing, the SQL Server and all of the Azure Arc data enabled bits. And in the time I'm talking, it's already recreated it. So wow, that's amazing. You just deleted it. I accidentally deleted a container on purpose, or a pod on purpose. And Azure Arc enabled data services is just going to bring it all back up again. And remember, my data and my logs are all stuck away in storage, and it's going to reconnect those and everything's going to be gorgeous. But actually, it's not really so gorgeous, because this pod is sat on Beard Linux 3. So if Beard Linux 3 falls away, then we've got no Benji. So let's set ourselves some variables, and I'm going to do this in a new session just to make sure I get things right. We're going to set ourselves our connection. I'm going to start it running, and then I'll explain what it's doing. So I'm going to create a 3-node availability group. This time it's going to be called BenAG. And the code looks about the same. So it says AZ data, Arc, SQL, MI, create. All the same. We'll give it a name, BenAG. But we've got this extra bit here, replicas 3. Let's have a look at replicas 3. So if we refresh this and we have a look here. Now on Beard Linux 2, I've got BenAG-0. And on Beard Linux 3, I've got BenAG1 and BenAG2. So I've got 3 pods with my SQL instances in them, and they're actually split across 2 nodes. So if I lose one of my nodes completely, I still have my connection. Another thing that's slightly different here is that we've got 3 of 4 containers running in this pod. So for a normal managed instance, we only had 3 containers. Now we have 4. If we go and have a look whilst that's deploying, we will go and have a look back into Weave. And if we look at the top here, we've got BenAG1, BenAG0, BenAG2. There's our containers. Again, they've got data and logs, data and logs, data and logs. It's the storage, all sorted. And if we click on one of these and we look over here, you can see, if I do it properly, that we've got another container. So this time we've got Arc HA Supervisor. Guess what that's doing? That's taking care of all of our high availability. So this is a gorgeous thing. Now we've got a proper availability group running as a managed instance in our data center, but we can control, we can alert, we can get, in the future, automated backup and restores. We can do usage, so we can charge back within the business if we need to. Let's have a look. Have we got all 4 running now? Yes. So over here, we have 4 of 4 containers running, and BenAG is ready. So I'm going to list my endpoints again. And this time we're going to see something slightly different. So we've got not just our managed instance connection, but also managed instance readable secondary replicas. Excellent. So we've got a read intent connection as well with a different port number. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to remember to paste it, even though it actually looks exactly the same. It is. And we're going to connect. Let's connect to our managed instance running on 3 replicas. Come on, let's connect. No connection could be made because oh, did it really? That's a bit annoying. Let's have a look. Let's try one more time. Did I actually paste it? 631341. Yes, I did. Why? Oh, why are you failing? Oh, let's right click and have a look at our logs. And we'll look at our SQL MI logs. And it does tell me that my container is ready. Okay, let's have a look in our data controller dashboard. We'll refresh this one. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. There we go. So Ben AG is ready, so we can connect to that. If we refresh, it's going to show us our dashboard endpoints and our external endpoint. And what we can do is we can create ourselves a new connection, and we'll connect as Ben admin, and it'll be dbatools, and we'll connect. And that's not going to connect either. Oh, ooh, demo fail. Demo fail, demo fail. Excellent work. So, what a pain. We have a demo fail. So what we will do is we will delete that managed instance and we will try a little trick that Rob knows where he will call it Benji. Benji. Did you delete? Yes, you did delete. And I'm going to run that and ask anybody if there were any questions whilst we're doing that. I can't see the chat. Excellent. Are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions? Because that's a lot of information to take in.
We don't have any questions.
There's a question in the chat here. Sorry, Alex, go on.
No, you go on. You spotted it. I didn't.
There's a question in the chat here about Grafana, Rob, about whether or not it's free.
Is Grafana free? I don't know. Go and have a look. I believe it is, but I am no expert. Is it included within your Azure Arc enabled data services? Yes. Right now that's in preview, so there's no cost for that. Costing will come at a later date.
Great. Do you know when is there a date for when this comes out of preview?
I have not been told that date. So yeah, it's
thanks very much.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things. It's in public preview. Are there customers using it in production? Yes, there absolutely are. I promise you, there are customers who are using this in production. Microsoft wouldn't be creating this if it wasn't something that people were using. Is it available for everybody to use in production? No, not yet. Absolutely not yet. But it is moving forward very, very quickly. They release updates every month, so you get this 3 replicas has only been about for the last 4 or 5 weeks. So it's a brand new thing.
Wow.
It's super good. Oh, I am so annoyed.
Just while you're waiting, I mean, sorry, go on.
No, ask the question, please.
Oh, I was just really thinking while you were waiting, just sort of asking the question generally. You see a lot of things, obviously, because a lot of the stuff on the data platform is moving so quickly that you do see a lot of things coming out in public preview. It's interesting that you say that there are people who've got this in production. What's your experience or recommendations even about using preview products in production?
Get Microsoft support.
Right.
Is absolutely what the idea is. You can imagine that if you're the sort of person or the sort of company that has gone to Microsoft and said, what I really want to be able to do is this, and Microsoft have said, okay, you're paying us a lot of money, we are going to develop this sort of thing for you and see if other people want to use it as well, then it is something that the need was required, and it was able to fulfill that need in its current state. So, and certainly as it moves forward, it's getting better. If your company is the sort that has that sort of unusual requirement, then I would say go to Microsoft and say, hello, we're here. What we want to do is this, and we think that this will work with it. Can you help us? And get that support, rather than going, let's chuck this in production in public preview, and then when we've got a question or something's not working quite right, go to Microsoft and go, hello, we'd like to, we've got a problem with this thing, because you're going to have to fight and battle through a lot of layers of process to be able to get back into the people who are really looking after this.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks very much.
You're more than welcome. Right, let's have another go. So let's see what happens if we try. So what I did is I changed the name, because changing the name, remember I said it gave me the same port number, and I thought that was a bit odd. What I do is just, there we go, see. So now we've got a connection. Huh. Thinks, must remember that little trick. So we've got a connection. If we look at our SQL, there we go. We're connected to SQL. Of course, another thing that we need to say, we're running on Linux. This is a container, but it's running on Linux. It doesn't matter, because SQL is SQL is SQL. SQL doesn't care what operating system it's using. So let's see which server name am I connected to. I'm connected to Benji AG0. And what I'm also going to do is grab the read-only endpoint as well, because we'll need that in a minute. So we are running on Benji A0. We look at our availability group. This time I will move it to the right. Let's do that again. So we're in our Benji AG SQL instance, and we've got an availability group, and the availability group is called contained AG. That's all we can do. We've got no control over this. This is provided for us. This is what it is. And you see that this instance is the primary, and that we have some other replicas. Something else that's interesting is you'll notice that we've got some availability databases already in our empty instance. We've got contained AG master and contained AG MSDB. Those are already there available for us, or being used for us. What are they? We don't quite know. And have we got a listener? Yep, we've got a listener, contained AG listener. It's got a name and everything. So let's have a look at our databases. Let's have a look at them in a table so we can read them. When we connect to the table, we just see master, temp, and MSDB. We don't see model, even though we saw those in our availability group databases. If we look at our availability databases in our availability group, we've got our master and we've got our MSDB. And we have a look at our replicas. There we are. We've got our replica 2, our replica 1. These are our secondaries. They're all synchronized and committed, and everything's beautiful. So we had our read-only connection. And if we connect with that, and this time we'll have a look at the pod. Remember, primary was on SQL AG, Benji AG 0. Now we're on Benji AG 1. Excellent. So what I'd really like to do is put a database into my availability group. But you can't. Well, can't using the trick that I did before, where you copy the backup file into the container and restore it, because you can't actually add it into the availability group. Your normal user doesn't have permission to alter the availability group and add a database. But hey, guess what? If you look, you'll find that there is a port 1533, which has an admin connection. Now, not a DAC connection, but an admin connection, a connection which is allowed to alter the availability group. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some Kubernetes. So we've got this file. Let's have a look at this file. Let's have a look at this file. There it is. We've got this file, and this file says, hey, create me a service, please. And we need to make sure that we change that to Benji AG. And we need to change that to Benji AG. The name can stay the same. We need to change that. We need to change that. Okay. So create me a service, please. Give it these labels so we know what it is. Call it Ben AG. In fact, call it Benji AG's admin service. And I want you to connect to the resource SQL managed instance. The controller is the availability group, the name of the MI. And I'd like you to connect to the primary one, please. So the role of the Microsoft AG for the contained AG availability group, I want to connect to primary, please. And then I want you to set port 1533 TCP to 31,000. So we can do that simply by doing this thing called kubectl apply -f and then file, boom, we've got a service created. So this means I can now connect to that service. And I'm going to connect to that service over port 1533 on my container. And if I look at my container, which pod, I'm connected to AG0. If I have a look at my, if I look at exec connections, I can see that my column, good work, Rob. Totally failing at all of the things. Let's do that instead. There we go. So my column 1, this is my SPID. I'm SPID 80, which is the top one. If I look at the top one and we go across, hey, look at that. I'm connected to port 1533. You see some other things that are connected to 1433. You've got some that are connected to 5022, so that'll be mirroring or perhaps the AG. Yeah, we won't look at those. So now that I'm doing that, I can do the same trick again, except I now need to change the name of my container. And I'm going to push, I'm going to copy my file to the container. It's going to sit there and pretend that it's doing it. Oh, let's see what happens. It's either copied or it hasn't, but we will then restore it. It doesn't look like it's worked. It definitely doesn't look like it's worked. Oh, why won't you just copy? Have I got the right names in there? Yes, I have got the right names in there. This copy that's not working, I think I've used the same name too many times this morning doing demos, and it's got itself in a pickle. Oh. Let's do a get file, and we'll do /var/op/SQL. No, we put it in backup. Backup. No, we have got a file. We have a file. then please restore my file. And you're still going to tell me, I wonder. So there's a possibility, because Stu will tell me if I'm wrong, because he wrote this code, that when it's reading the backup header, if it now thinks that my backup from a SQL 29 instance that restored this morning, and then you've seen it has been restored. I wonder if I've updated, my container has been updated in the background. Anyway, what I'm going to show you is that whilst you can't do it with dbatools, all you need to do is connect with this 1533, restore your database, obviously take a backup, because AdventureWorks is simple by default. And then you can just run the query, alter availability group, put in contained AG, and then add the database in. And lo and behold, you will have an AG. Fortunately, demo gods have failed me. But hopefully you can see the way this is going. You had a quick run through, wrong one. A quick run through of Azure Arc enabled data services, and you can see how you can use it at the command line, how you can use it in Azure Data Studio. We showed scaling. If you wish to create a new instance, then you can literally just click on some buttons. I accept, and then I'd like to use this data controller. We'll use the name, give it a password for, this is for Postgres. How many workers do we want? What port do we want to use? Which engine version? We have the same sort of thing for our storage settings. Which storage class are we going to use for our data, our logs, our backups? And then the resource settings. How many CPUs do I request? How many am I limited to? Same for memories. And you run all this and you press deploy. And what it does, it creates you a Python notebook in Azure Data Studio, and you just press play and it goes off and deploys everything for you. So you can do it all straight out of Azure Data Studio. You don't need to touch the command line, Kubernetes. You don't need to think about YAML. You can do everything from here. It's very exciting times. It's a very interesting technology. Slightly grumpy that my demos haven't worked, but them's the breaks. It's a Friday. And that's me almost at time. So thank you very much for having me, Data Relay. Well done. Congratulations. Now you can all get to go home. Oh, yeah, you're already at home, aren't you? Normally Friday night, I have the shortest drive home and you all have to go much further than me. But I guess we've all got the same walk to our sofas.